The air inside the Galactic arena was thick with tension. The crowd roared from all sides, their cheers rising in volume as the battle began. At the center of the ring, Jackson stood, his back straight, fists clenched, his heart pounding against his chest. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, the entire universe was watching, and the mockery of the Empire's elite guards hung like a dark cloud in the background. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was just a human, a relic from a world long forgotten, destroyed by the Empire's insatiable greed. His people were nothing but a fleeting memory, their world turned to ashes in the wake of the Empire's conquest. And yet, here he was, standing at the center of the Empire's greatest spectacle, the gladiatorial arena that had been the stage for countless deaths. Jackson's weapon felt light in his hands. A standard-issue plasma blade. Nothing fancy. Nothing special. It was a human weapon, primitive, by the standards of the Empire's finest. But for Jackson, it was enough. It had to be. His eyes flickered over to the guards. Zorath, the lead elite guard, was standing closest to him, towering above everyone in the crowd. The alien's jagged silver armor gleamed, reflecting the harsh lights of the arena. Beside him were three others, Valther, a massive alien brute, Mira, a deadly assassin with liquid movements, and Rykos, the psychic. They were all watching, waiting, knowing that they'd enjoy the spectacle of watching a human warrior die. Jackson smirked, tightening his grip on the blade. "They think I'm weak," Jackson muttered to himself. "They think I'll fail." The crowd's roars faded into the background as he focused, drawing every ounce of strength he could muster from deep within. He wasn't fighting for survival. He was fighting for more than that. This was his chance to strike back at the Empire, to show them that humans weren't just easy prey, that they weren't just a footnote in the galaxy's history. He could hear Zorath's voice cut through the noise, mocking him. "You really think your kind stands a chance?" Zorath's voice was like a low growl. "Your kind isn't even worth the blood it takes to spill. You are a fossil. A fossil clinging to life. And you will die as such." The elite guards laughed, their laughter a sharp, venomous sound. The crowd joined in, but Jackson stood tall, unwavering. He wasn't just any human, he was the last living representative of his people. He had a responsibility to them. To his home. To Earth. He could feel the ground beneath him trembling as the first enemy stepped into the arena. A massive beast, its skin covered in thick, armor-like plates. It snarled, its teeth bared in an unrelenting growl as it lumbered toward him, every step sending a ripple through the air. The crowd screamed in anticipation. This was it. The first trial, the first test of whether Jackson would survive or fall like so many before him. He stood still, studying the beast. It was fast, stronger than any human, and certainly capable of crushing him in seconds. But Jackson wasn't here to fight with brute force. He had no intention of matching strength with the creature. He would use the arena itself as his weapon. The beast lunged, but Jackson was ready. He sidestepped, narrowly avoiding the swipe of its claws, and the beast's momentum sent it crashing into a pillar. The crowd's roar dimmed for a moment as the creature stumbled back, disoriented. Jackson's heart raced, but his mind remained calm. He knew the arena well. He'd studied the layout, learned the angles, the escape routes, the hazards. This wasn't a battle of strength. It was a battle of wits. The beast recovered quickly, its yellow eyes locking onto him as it charged again, more ferocious than before. But Jackson was already moving. He sprinted toward a raised platform at the far end of the arena, using his momentum to propel himself upwards. The creature followed, but as it attempted to climb after him, Jackson launched himself off the edge, aiming directly for its back. With a swift slash of the plasma blade, he struck, cutting deep into its spine. The beast let out a deafening roar of pain, thrashing wildly, but Jackson kept his focus. The blade sliced cleanly through its body, severing its spinal cord. With a final, guttural cry, the creature collapsed to the ground, motionless. The crowd fell silent. Jackson stood, chest heaving, sweat dripping from his brow. The arena was still, the tension almost palpable. The beast's blood stained the floor, and Jackson's mind was buzzing with adrenaline. He had done it, he had killed the creature. He had survived. Zoratha's voice pierced the silence, dripping with disbelief. Well, it seems the human isn't as weak as we thought. The elite guards were no longer laughing. They watched him now, with narrowed eyes, their expressions no longer full of mockery but cautious curiosity. Jackson stood tall, his pulse still racing, but he wasn't finished. This was just the beginning. His survival wasn't a fluke. It was a message. They think they can break me, Jackson muttered to himself. But they'll regret underestimating humanity. The crowd began to cheer again, their voices rising in waves as the arena's speakers blasted the announcement, "Victory to the human warrior, Jackson." But the true test had only just begun. He could feel the eyes of the elite guards boring into him, their presence like a heavy weight pressing down on his shoulders. They had seen his strength, his skill. And they weren't done yet. Zoratha's voice echoed through the arena once more. "Human, enjoy your moment of glory. It won't last." The elite guards began to move, circling the arena like predators, each of them drawing their weapons, preparing for the next round. Jackson didn't flinch. He stood his ground, his plasma blade crackling with energy. The crowd's excitement reached a fever pitch, but Jackson's mind was clear. He was more than ready. This was just the beginning of his fight, not only for his survival but for humanity's future. As the elite guards closed in, Jackson's resolve hardened. There was no turning back now. The fate of his people was in his hands. In the distance, hidden from view, a quiet voice spoke. "Let the real game begin." Jackson's heart pounded against his chest, his breath sharp and shallow as he stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by the bloodstains of the beast he had just slain. The cheers of the crowd were deafening, but it was the silence from the elite guards that truly spoke volumes. They were no longer mocking him, their expressions were carefully neutral, calculating. The lead guard, Zorath, stood at the front, eyes locked on Jackson, as if trying to gauge whether the human had any more tricks up his sleeve. Jackson tightened his grip on the plasma blade, feeling the weight of their gaze pressing into him. He had survived the first trial, barely, but the real fight was just beginning. He couldn't afford to rest on his small victory. The others were watching, waiting for him to falter. The voice of the announcer boomed, cutting through the tension, "Victory to the human warrior, Jackson." But the trials are far from over. As the crowd roared in response, Jackson's eyes darted across the arena, scanning the surroundings for his next opponent. The sounds of the cheering masses faded into the background as he focused on the elite guards. Their armor gleamed in the harsh lights, each soldier a force to be reckoned with. They were more than just warriors, they were the living embodiments of the Empire's power, genetically enhanced and trained to be invincible. Zorath stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Jackson. The crowd fell silent in anticipation, sensing that the next phase of the trial was about to begin. Jackson's mind raced. He had already proved he wasn't just some weak human, but facing these guards, each one capable of crushing him in seconds, was an entirely different challenge. They were warriors of legend, their power unmatched. But Jackson had one thing they didn't, his will to survive. And his ability to think outside the box. "You've done well so far, human," Zoratha's voice echoed through the arena, dripping with condescension. "But don't get comfortable. This next trial will be your last." With a signal from Zorath, the gates to the arena opened once again, and a new challenger stepped forward, a massive alien, towering over Jackson. Its skin was a deep, scaly black, and its eyes glowed an eerie yellow. The creature had 4 arms, each one rippling with muscle. It was a beast of war, bred specifically for the arena, and it had slaughtered countless others before Jackson. The crowd's roars grew louder, their anticipation reaching a fever pitch as the creature's massive form moved forward with predatory grace. Jackson's fingers twitched around the hilt of his blade, but he didn't move yet. The creature's steps were slow, deliberate, as it circled him, its eyes fixed on him with hungry intent. He could feel the weight of its gaze, the pulse of death that radiated from its every movement. "Is this what you call a warrior?" Jackson muttered under his breath, knowing that the creature couldn't understand his words. "Let's see what you've got." The creature growled, its chest expanding as it prepared to charge. Jackson's instincts kicked in, but his mind remained calm. He had no chance of beating this thing head-on. Speed, agility, and intelligence would be his allies. As the creature lunged, Jackson dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the sharp claws that swiped through the air where he had just been. The ground trembled beneath his feet as the beast's weight hit the earth, its momentum pushing it forward even after its strike missed. Jackson took a deep breath and then rushed in, his blade flashing in the air as he aimed for the creature's side. The creature reacted quickly, twisting its body and raising one of its forearms to block Jackson's attack. The blade clashed against its thick hide, sending sparks flying. Jackson grunted in frustration, but he didn't hesitate. He spun on his heel, narrowly avoiding another swipe from the creature's claws, and ducked beneath its reach. He was moving faster than he'd ever moved before, using the creature's size and power against it. But the beast wasn't stupid, it adjusted, adapting quickly to Jackson's movements. It swiped again, this time with two arms, forcing Jackson to retreat. "Come on," Jackson muttered, backing up slowly, keeping his distance. "I've fought tougher than you." The creature growled, its body heaving with each breath, and charged once more. Jackson didn't wait for it to get close. As the creature lunged, he rolled to the side, barely escaping its grasp. But this time, instead of running, Jackson quickly leaped onto a nearby pillar, using his momentum to push himself higher. The crowd gasped as Jackson soared through the air, landing on top of the pillar just as the creature's claws crashed into the ground where he had been. The creature roared in frustration, shaking the arena with its anger. Jackson grinned, a spark of excitement in his chest. "You're not as fast as you think." He didn't give the beast a chance to recover. Jackson launched himself off the pillar and, with all his strength, drove the plasma blade down toward the creature's exposed flank. The blade cut through its thick scales, drawing a spray of dark blood. The beast howled, thrashing violently as it tried to shake Jackson off. But Jackson wasn't done yet. He used his positioning to his advantage, striking the creature again and again, each blow pushing the beast closer to the edge. The creature was strong, but Jackson was faster. It was only a matter of time before he wore it down. Finally, with one well-placed strike, Jackson pierced the creature's heart. The beast's body froze for a moment, and then it collapsed to the ground with a deafening crash. The arena was silent for a heartbeat before the crowd erupted into a deafening roar. Jackson stood over the fallen creature, panting, his heart racing. His body ached, but the adrenaline kept him going. He had done it, he had beaten the beast. But there was no time to rest. The true challenge still awaited him. He turned his gaze back to the elite guards. Their eyes were cold, their expressions unreadable. Zorath stepped forward again, his tone colder than before. "You've won the first two trials, human," Zorath said, his voice devoid of amusement. "But you won't survive the next. You've proven nothing except that you're stubborn. And stubbornness doesn't win wars." Jackson narrowed his eyes, locking onto the guard. He didn't respond to Zorath's taunts. There was no need to. His actions spoke louder than words ever could. He wasn't here to play by the rules of the Empire. He wasn't here to entertain the masses. He was here to make a statement, to show them that humanity wasn't something to be laughed at, and it sure as hell wasn't something to be discarded. Zorath's eyes narrowed as if he knew that Jackson wasn't finished yet. But neither was Jackson. The next trial was coming, and no matter what it was, he was ready for it. The battle was far from over. And for the first time since stepping into the arena, Jackson smiled. The game had only just begun. Jackson stood at the edge of the arena, breathing heavily, his plasma blade now stained with the blood of the monstrous creature he had just slain. The crowd's roars echoed in his ears, but he barely noticed. His focus was entirely on the elite guards. Zorath, the leader of the group, stood among them with an unreadable expression. His eyes, however, betrayed a hint of surprise. He hadn't expected Jackson to survive this long. "You're still standing," Zoratha's voice cut through the noise, deep and laced with a touch of irritation. "It seems you're more than just a nuisance, human." Jackson didn't respond. There was no need. He was done with talking. His actions had already spoken louder than any words ever could. He wasn't here to prove himself to the guards or to the Empire. He was here to survive and, if he could, bring this Empire to its knees. As Zoratha's eyes scanned him, Jackson felt something shift in the air. A ripple, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A new tension had settled in, and it wasn't just the adrenaline pumping through his veins. It was as if something deeper had awakened inside him, a power that had been dormant, waiting to be unlocked. "Get ready, human," Zorath continued, the words dripping with disdain. "You've made it this far, but you're still playing our game. You don't know what you're up against." Jackson's grip tightened on his blade, his knuckles white with the intensity of the moment. "I don't need to know what I'm up against," he said, his voice cold and steady. "I know what I'm capable of." Zorath sneered but said nothing. Instead, he nodded to the other guards, and the next trial began. The ground trembled beneath Jackson's feet as the arena's mechanisms activated, and suddenly, a new form of terror entered the stage. A new challenge, different from anything Jackson had faced so far. The walls of the arena shifted, revealing a vast array of advanced technological traps designed to test every skill, every reflex, and every ounce of stamina he had. Jackson's eyes flicked around, scanning the area for the traps, trying to anticipate the oncoming danger. This wasn't just a physical test anymore. This was mental warfare. Out of nowhere, a wave of energy surged through the arena, and suddenly, the atmosphere changed. It felt as if the arena itself was alive, its energy pulsing with an unfamiliar rhythm. Jackson's instincts screamed at him to move, but he forced himself to stay still for a moment longer, trying to assess the new threat, and then it hit him. The walls weren't just traps. They were feeding off his presence, drawing from his energy. His senses flared as he realized the arena wasn't just a test, it was a weapon, designed to drain his strength and break him down, physically and mentally. Zoratha's voice echoed across the arena, cold and mocking. "Do you feel it? The arena is alive. The longer you stand, the more it takes. And there's nothing you can do to stop it." Jackson clenched his jaw, refusing to show any weakness. He had been through worse than this, he just needed to think. His survival wasn't about brute strength or endurance. It was about strategy. About using the environment to his advantage. Suddenly, the first of the traps activated, mechanical arms shot out from the walls, each one faster and more lethal than anything he had faced. Jackson didn't hesitate. He darted to the side, narrowly avoiding the first swing, then rolled under another. He could feel the heat of the machines as they passed mere inches from him. He wasn't going to make it if he just reacted. He had to stay one step ahead. As he dodged, a flash of light caught his attention. The energy pulse, the one Zorath had spoken of, was growing stronger. And that's when it clicked. The arena wasn't just a series of traps. It was also controlling the energy flow around him, manipulating the arena's tech to its advantage. Jackson's power was being drained, slowly but surely. He had to find a way to reverse the flow, to regain control. With every trap he avoided, Jackson's mind worked overtime, calculating, analyzing, forming a plan. He had to turn the energy against itself. The next wave of attacks came quickly. But Jackson was ready. He leaped toward the center of the arena, directly into the path of a series of electric coils designed to ensnare him. As they shot toward him, he didn't fight them. Instead, he used his momentum to twist and redirect his body, allowing the coils to pass harmlessly over him. At the last moment, he reached out, grabbing one of the coils and yanking it from its base. A surge of energy coursed through his body, and for a split second, he felt it, the power he had been seeking. Jackson grinned, feeling the rush of energy fill him. He wasn't just surviving now. He was winning. But Zorath was not pleased. The guard's eyes narrowed as he watched Jackson manipulate the arena's systems. His voice thundered across the arena. You think you can use our technology against us, human? You're wrong. Before Jackson could react, the arena shifted again. This time, the walls closed in, forcing him into a small, confined space. He was trapped. Jackson's pulse quickened. This was different. The walls weren't just moving, they were closing in with purpose, like a predator closing in on its prey. And then, in the center of the arena, a new threat emerged. It was a machine, a towering, humanoid figure with advanced weapons mounted on its limbs. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. The machine raised its arm, and a barrage of energy blasts shot toward Jackson. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the first wave. But the machine didn't stop. It adjusted, recalibrating its aim with precision. Jackson's mind raced. He couldn't keep dodging forever. The machine was relentless, its every move calculated and cold. But he had a plan. As the machine fired again, Jackson dove toward one of the exposed energy conduits that ran along the edge of the arena. With a sharp slash of his blade, he severed the connection, causing a surge of unstable energy to course through the system. The machine faltered, its movements slowing as the power flickered. Jackson didn't waste a second. He rushed forward, using the chaos to his advantage. The machine's energy weapons sputtered, and in the split second of weakness, Jackson made his move. He leaped onto the machine's back, using his blade to hack into its central core. The machine groaned, its system short-circuiting as Jackson tore through its defenses. Finally, with a roar, the machine collapsed to the ground, its massive form crumpling under its own weight. For a moment, the arena was still. The crowd held its breath, waiting for something. Jackson's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't relax. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. From the edge of the arena, Zoratha's voice rang out, filled with icy fury. "You've made a grave mistake, human," he growled. "You think you've won? The trials will continue until your spirit is broken. The Empire will break you." But Jackson stood tall, his eyes flashing with determination. "You're wrong," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not here to break. I'm here to make you break." And as the arena trembled once again, Jackson knew he had just taken the first step toward victory. Jackson's chest heaved as he stood in the center of the arena, the remnants of the machine he had destroyed still sparking in the background. The crowd's roar was deafening, but it only fueled his determination. He wasn't here for their entertainment. He wasn't here to play by the Empire's rules. He was here to make them pay for what they had done, what they had taken from him. The elite guards watched him from the stands, their expressions hardening with each victory. Zoratha's eyes were narrow slits of contempt, but even he couldn't hide the flicker of respect that was slowly creeping into his gaze. Jackson had proven himself in every trial so far. He was more than they had bargained for, and they knew it. The question was no longer whether he could survive, it was how long before they had to kill him. But Jackson wasn't done. Not by a long shot. He didn't wait for Zoratha's next taunt. He knew the Empire would never stop throwing challenges at him until he was dead. So, when the floor beneath him rumbled and the arena shifted again, he was ready. His grip tightened on the plasma blade as new gates creaked open, revealing his next opponent. It wasn't a machine this time. It wasn't a beast. It was a person. But not just any person. The man who stepped into the arena was tall and broad-shouldered, his skin an unnatural shade of blue, his eyes glowing with a fierce intensity. His armor shimmered with technological advancements, far beyond anything Jackson had seen before. This wasn't just some random fighter. This was one of the Empire's top assassins, an operative who had taken down entire rebel cells with a single strike. His name was Karath, and his reputation preceded him. Jackson's pulse quickened. He had known this moment was coming. The time for strategy and surprise was over. This was a fight to the death, and he would need every ounce of his willpower to survive. Karatha's mouth curled into a sadistic smile as he met Jackson's eyes. "You've lasted this long, human. I'll make sure your suffering ends here." Jackson didn't flinch. He had heard it all before. The Empire's warriors were always so sure of themselves, so certain that nothing could touch them. They underestimated humanity every time, and that would be their downfall. "I'm not here to suffer," Jackson replied, his voice steady. "I'm here to make sure you know exactly what happens when you push a human too far." Korath didn't respond. He lunged forward, his blade a blur of motion. Jackson barely had time to react, diving to the side to avoid the strike. The assassin was fast, faster than anything Jackson had faced so far. But Jackson wasn't intimidated. He had survived every trial, and he was still standing. That had to count for something. The fight was brutal from the start. Korath moved like liquid metal, his strikes precise and deadly, aimed at disabling Jackson with every swing. But Jackson was no slouch. His reflexes were honed from years of survival, his mind sharp from the endless challenges he had faced. He could see the attack coming before it even happened, moving just enough to avoid the worst of it. It was a dance, Jackson dodging, countering, searching for an opening. Korath's style was clean, efficient, but Jackson could see the cracks in his form. Every time the assassin lunged, there was a brief moment where his body was exposed, where he overextended himself. It was subtle, but it was enough for Jackson to capitalize on. Jackson's plasma blade clashed against Korath's sword, the sound of the impact ringing through the arena. For a moment, they were locked in a struggle, their faces inches apart, eyes locked in a silent challenge. But then Jackson twisted, using his body's momentum to push Korath back, creating the space he needed. Korath staggered but quickly regained his balance, eyes burning with fury. "You're persistent, I'll give you that," he said, voice dripping with venom. "But that won't save you. You don't get it, do you?" Jackson shot back, panting as he circled. "You're all just pawns in a game that's already over. The Empire is dead. You just don't know it yet." Korath sneered and charged again, his sword slashing through the air with deadly intent. Jackson blocked the first strike, but the force of the blow nearly knocked him off balance. He stumbled back, his foot catching on the edge of a raised platform. He barely managed to regain his footing before Korath was upon him again. This time, Jackson didn't retreat. He leaped forward, using the momentum from his stumble to his advantage. His plasma blade slashed through the air, meeting Korath's sword with a clang. The assassin's eyes widened in surprise as Jackson pressed the attack, driving him back. Jackson could feel the power within him, the energy that had been dormant for so long, the power he had unlocked in the earlier trials. It wasn't just his strength. It wasn't just his will. It was something deeper, something the Empire had never expected. And now, as he fought for his life, he could feel that power surging through him, giving him an edge he never thought possible. With a final, decisive move, Jackson twisted Korath's sword out of his hand, sending it skittering across the arena floor. Before the assassin could react, Jackson stepped forward and drove his blade into Korath's chest, his strength fueled by the force of his will. Korath gasped, the life draining from his eyes as he collapsed to the ground. The arena fell silent. Jackson stood over the fallen assassin, his chest heaving with exhaustion. But there was no time to rest. The crowd's cheers rang in his ears, but he could barely hear them. His focus was on the elite guards, their cold eyes watching him from the stands. He could feel their animosity, their disbelief. Zoratha's voice came again, louder this time, cutting through the tension. "You think this changes anything, human? You've killed Korath, yes. But there's more where that came from. You're still a fool if you think you can take down the Empire." Jackson's gaze didn't leave Zoratha's. He didn't speak. There was no need for words. The Empire had made one fatal mistake, they had underestimated him. And now, one by one, they would pay for it. The next challenge was coming. Jackson could feel it. But for the first time, he didn't fear it. He welcomed it. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about revenge. About bringing the Empire to its knees. The battle raged on, but Jackson knew one thing for sure, he was no longer just a warrior in their game. He was their reckoning. Jackson stood in the heart of the arena, his body aching from the brutal trials, his mind racing with every decision. His blade was slick with the blood of his fallen opponents, his hands trembling slightly from the constant battle. The roar of the crowd still echoed in his ears, but the noise felt distant now. All that mattered was the final showdown, the one that had been looming ever since he first stepped into the arena. Zoratha's voice broke through his thoughts, cold and taunting, a reminder of the challenge ahead. "You've made it this far, human," Zorath said, his tone laced with venom. "But this is where your journey ends. You think you've proved something? That you've made a dent in the Empire? You're nothing but an insect to be crushed." Jackson's eyes locked onto Zorath, unyielding. The taunts didn't faze him anymore. He had been underestimating humanity for too long, and he had already proven that time and again. Every word Zorath spoke was an attempt to rattle him, but Jackson wasn't here to entertain the Emperor's elite guards anymore. He was here to end the Empire's reign of terror. His mission had never been clearer. "Shut up, Zorath," Jackson muttered, his voice low, but steady. "I'm done listening to your threats." Zorath's expression darkened, but he said nothing more. Instead, he motioned for the arena gates to open. A mechanical hum filled the air, and from the darkness beyond, something massive emerged. It was a machine, taller than anything Jackson had ever seen, with limbs like colossal pincers and massive energy weapons mounted on its shoulders. This wasn't just a machine. This was the Empire's final weapon, a combat construct designed to obliterate anything in its path. Jackson's stomach churned at the sight of it. It was a giant, an unstoppable force, and it was clearly meant to crush him once and for all. The crowd went silent, their anticipation palpable. The tension in the arena was thick enough to cut with a knife. But Jackson didn't flinch. He'd faced the worst the Empire had to offer, and he wasn't about to back down now. The machine lurched forward, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground beneath Jackson's feet. Each step seemed to resonate through his bones, a reminder of how small he was compared to the monstrosity before him. But Jackson had already faced impossible odds. He was still standing. The first blast came in an instant, an energy beam shot out from the machine's weapon, and Jackson dove to the side, barely avoiding the blast. He rolled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest as he watched the machine adjust, recalibrating its aim. The machine's movements were deliberate, precise. It wasn't just a mindless weapon, it was designed to outthink and outmaneuver any opponent. It was intelligent. And it was fast. But Jackson wasn't about to make this easy. His eyes darted around the arena, looking for anything that could give him an edge. The walls were lined with energy conduits, pulsing with power. He could feel the energy in the air, like static electricity before a storm. He had to move fast, or he'd be obliterated. The machine's cannons fired again, the blasts lighting up the arena like lightning strikes. Jackson dodged, rolling to the side and using the arena's layout to his advantage. He sprinted toward the far wall, the machine's fire narrowly missing him. He wasn't running from it, he was luring it in. The machine continued its relentless barrage, but Jackson was patient. He waited for the right moment, watching the energy blasts fire, listening for the hum of the cannons as they charged again. There. A brief moment of vulnerability. With a burst of speed, Jackson closed the distance between them, ducking behind a massive pillar just as another blast erupted behind him. He pressed his back against the pillar, chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face. He could hear the machine's heavy steps, its servos whirring as it adjusted its aim, preparing for the next attack. Jackson steadied his breathing, calming himself. He had been through hell. He had fought beasts, machines, and trained killers. This machine was no different. It was just another challenge, one that he would overcome. The machine's cannon aimed at his last known position, and Jackson knew this was his moment. He sprang into action, moving faster than the machine could track. His feet pounded against the ground as he leapt onto a raised platform near the machine's side. The giant mech tried to track him with its sensors, but it was too slow. Jackson's plasma blade flared to life as he leapt, bringing it down toward the machine's exposed power core. The blade cut through the metal with ease, sending a burst of sparks flying. But the machine was resilient, its defenses kicking in. It retracted its damaged limb, trying to shake him off. But Jackson wasn't done. He dug deep, finding the strength he needed to keep his blade buried inside the machine's core. The hum of its energy systems was growing louder, signaling that the machine was close to short-circuiting. The arena shook with the force of the machine's attempts to dislodge him. Its weapons fired wildly, but Jackson held his ground, pushing the blade further into the heart of the construct. He could feel the energy of the machine's systems draining, the power fading, as if it was fighting to stay alive. And then, with one final push, the machine let out a screech, its systems collapsing in on themselves. Sparks flew, and its massive form crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The arena fell silent, the crowd stunned into disbelief. Jackson stepped back, his breath ragged, his body covered in sweat and blood. He had done it. He had taken down the Empire's final weapon. But as the machine's corpse smoldered at his feet, Jackson's victory was bittersweet. The fight was far from over. He had proven something important today. He had shown the Empire that humanity wasn't something to be written off. But there was still work to be done. The Empire wasn't going to fall just because one soldier had survived. Zoratha's voice cut through the silence, colder than ever. "You think you've won, human," he snarled. "This is just one victory in a war you'll never win." Jackson's eyes met Zoratha's, his expression unwavering. "You're wrong," Jackson said, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "This war is already over. You just don't know it yet." The elite guards were silent now, watching him with something approaching respect. They had underestimated him, underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Jackson turned his back on them, the arena's doors opening to reveal the next step in his journey. He had proven his point. He had survived against impossible odds. Now it was time to take the fight to the Empire itself. The rebellion would rise, and humanity would have its day. And nothing, not Zorath, not the Empire, could stop it.